the poopsmith has taken a vow of silence.
I so missed the boat on all that stuff, man. All y'all were so fucking into it in high school. And I'm like, I don't get it. And I never bothered to get it. I just got left behind.
This is a failure, not on your part, but on the part of whoever you called friends in high school.
Or middle school.
Shit, that's
middle
deep.
school.
That's deep.
You know what the fact of it is? I was not going to be able to load Flash videos on AOL. My watching of stuff on like flashplayer.com or whatever the fuck it was called was like at Nana's house. That is when I got to watch things on the internet. And that was not an all the time thing. That was a rarely thing.
We never had AOL. I never had an AIM. I was an MSN Messenger kind of guy.
That was your boomer father leading you astray.
Wow. MSN Messenger. That's so funny. No, man, AIM. Oh boy, I got into some stuff on AIM that should probably never see the light of day.
They're still looking for you, Chris.
That's where boys became men.
Yep.
It's definitely where boys were groomed by men, that's for sure.
I learned a lot of things about myself in instant messenger chats.
Oh my God. All right. So is there anything positive we're talking about this week?
Final Fantasy VII Remake, EJ.
I will choose to believe that that is true until proven otherwise.
I mean, I have a lot of like complaints, I guess. Right now, I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, it's not so much like this is bad. It's more like, all right, clearly is not for me. These things aren't for me. These things might be. Here's how I feel about it altogether.
EJ, I feel like we need to have like an intervention with you, or just like an exercise where we have you talk about any video game you want for 10 minutes and only say positive things. Talk about like your favorite game of all time and only talk about the positive things, because I think even that would be difficult for you.
I think you should go back and re-listen to some of our fucking podcasts, Nick. That's what you should do. Chris and I spent 2 hours saying nothing but positive things about Spider-Man and fucking 2 Mario games. A Mario game that I gave a 77 I still talked about nicely for an hour.
You had some nice things to say.
I had plenty of nice things to say.
No, you did. You did. It's true. But no negatives, though. No negatives. It's a good meme.
It's a good meme. Every time you say something nice, it is with the looming threat of the actual feelings of negativity.
Compliment sandwich. I really liked the characters in Mario RPG. Everything about the way the game is played is fucking terrible. But you know what? Some of the songs, kind of catchy. I scrolled Twitter to some of those songs for 45 minutes.
I had a great time playing this game with Nick. Because I was playing with Nick, not because it was fun to actually do the gameplay.
I don't think I had anything negative to say about Risk of Rain 2. That game fucks.
That game rips.
That's true.
I'm obviously exaggerating to make a point, EJ. Maybe you've heard of hyperbole.
It's not like a movie where like, if a movie has something goofy, you can write it off and get into the next scene. If you have a problem with a video game, it is usually present in every aspect of the thing you're doing constantly. And so it's hard if there's something overwhelmingly, not just negative, but just something that sticks out and is obnoxious. It's hard to talk about anything else without that thing also being there all the time. So it's just part of the experience.
I just want you to be able to focus on the things that make you happy.
Good fucking luck. So what else are we talking about today? Remake, layoffs, Pokemon Presents, Yuzu.
Little what we play in as per usual.
Yeah, I want to hear about EJ's FF7 thoughts. And Chris, I don't know if you've been playing Intermission, Intergrade. I can't remember what the differences are. The DLC, have you played that yet?
I've put maybe an hour into it in the last 3 days, and that is probably all I'm going to be able to put into it until Monday night.
Oh, that feels bad.
It's unfortunate.
Nick, you spent like an hour and 5 minutes last week talking about 3 games you've been playing. Have you been playing more games since we talked less than a week ago?
Yeah. I've probably put 10, 15 hours, probably 10, into Legend of Nayuta Boundless Trails. I think it's Boundless Trails.
Nick, play a game with a normal title challenge. Impossible.
I played Dredge last week.
Okay, good point.
One word.
That's like
verb.
Yeah. 5 characters.
This
or
is
6.
The record of Lodos Road, D-Lit and Wonder Labyrinth. Like, what the fuck is this? What did you even just say to me a minute ago? Did I get that name right off the rip?
Yeah.
Yes!
Bad name, but you remembered it.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
This is the Console Crusade podcast. We have another long cold open, except this time we're not talking about candy. We're just meandering about things. I'm EJ Olson. I'm with Nick Durheim.
Hey.
He's here. I'm with Chris Gillifour.
The spice must flow.
This man's got a Dune 2 cup full of his own tears. And now he's drinking it. What are you doing?
It's recycled. It was recycled in the thigh pads of my still suit.
Well, that's because his other Dune receptacle is full of something else, and he doesn't want to drink that.
I offered my body's water to Shai Hulud.
Oh, right. I get all of these references, guys.
Have you seen the popcorn bucket, EJ?
No, I know this man who poo-poos on us for hoarding things. Well, you've turned into a little bit of a hoarder. I see that shelf behind you. Justifying throwing out game cases because you don't want to have to haul them around when you move. Yet, you've got a theater ephemera collection full of popcorn buckets and limited edition cups and Buc-ee's merchandise coming out of the wazoo. I don't want to hear it about how I hoard things anymore.
All my Buc-ee stuff is like functional, like my cooler for my lunchbox for going to work, our camping chairs, stuff like that. Practical stuff. Yeah, I'm seeing EJ discover. How have you been living under a rock? You've never seen this?
Maybe this went in the group chat one morning. But
yeah.
My God, man. This was in theaters? People had these on their laps?
And the teeth are silicone. So, and they all move. So the idea is you put your hand into the sandworm's mouth and you have to fist the popcorn and pull it out through the mouth. I did not go see this movie at AMC. That's the AMC bucket. The Regal bucket was a little more like boring, basic bitch bucket. But we stopped by AMC on the way to Regal when we saw it for the first time last Sunday. Bought that bucket, put it in the car, wrapped it up in my coat so it wouldn't get beat up.
Ribbed for Chris's pleasure.
Yeah, I was walking into my office with that under one arm because I was like, this is gonna go on the top of my shelves. I've got a spot for it. And I'm walking into one of my students, sees me coming in and goes, "Oh, not the Dune bucket. Oh, Chris." I'm like, bucket. Yeah, the Dune bucket.
That's good.
Buttered for his pleasure.
All of the movie stuff and the stuff that I've picked up that you can see on my shelf behind me. This is all stuff that I bought since we moved to Louisiana. Because when we moved down there, it was literally my dad's like maybe 10 foot by 4 foot trailer to put with like a 2.5 or 3 foot tall like siding that we could put stuff in. Like that was it. Like we did not have a lot of space. And most of the games that I have on Switch are all, I still have those cases. But all my PlayStation cases, I don't really care.
It's just a DVD case.
Yeah, I have my stuff that I like. Same as everybody. I don't have like 20 cathode ray tube televisions in my garage just because, though. That is
I am a sicko. Let's kick us off here with the 3DS top 100 honorable mentions. Off the top of your head, Nick, do you know, did any 3DS games not named Awakening end up on this list?
Technically, Shovel Knight is a 3DS game as well. But no, I did not put that as its lead platform. I didn't double check and see if any other games also trickled out onto 3DS as far as the indie games. But those are pretty much it. Those two. 1.5.
1.5. And Awakening, sadly, maybe the greatest Fire Emblem game, trapped on the 3DS.
It'll get a remake in the next 5 years.
Maybe. Or they'll just keep remaking fucking NES games or something.
They'll trade it off. They'll probably do Genealogy this year. I don't know when the next time they're going to do like a mainline. Was it the main team that worked on Engage? Or I thought that was like a less Intelligent Systems and more Koei Tecmo, or is it the other way around? I don't know.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
It won't be until the next system. So in the next 3 years, you'll probably get a new. But then what's remade after that? They're going to go Fire Emblem 5, do fucking Thracia 776 or some bullshit. Like, come on. People can only handle so much bullshit. They're going to want Awakening, right?
Couldn't have said it any better. People can only handle so much bullshit.
We need more waifus.
Okay, all right. 3DS. Do I gotta go eeny, miny, mo to see which one of you gets Metroid here? Do we have to flip a coin to make this fair?
We might have to have split custody on this one.
It's not mine.
Oh,
well, then I'll hog it. It's all me.
All right, Nick, kick us off.
Yeah, Samus Returns was awesome. It was Mercury Steam's first go at Metroid. Obviously, they had worked on similar genre games in the past. I think they did both Lords of Shadow 3DS games back in the day with Castlevania. So they were used to the platform and used to the genre, but I think Konami was not ever really a good steward of that franchise, and it was only really like they kind of ass backwards fell into it because of Igarashi being like the lead guy. But after he left, Castlevania was pretty rudderless. But this was a good return to form for Sakamoto, definitely, after the huge failure of Other M, and actually doing a 2D Metroid for the first time since Zero Mission Infusion back on the Game Boy Advance. And it was really good. I don't think they really there was a lot of refinement that needed to happen, and I think Dread made a lot of those big steps, but the way they interpreted and added to probably the most minimal of the Metroid games, I think the original Metroid 2 is even more of a kind of husk of like a real game compared to Metroid on NES. And Metroid was like super ambitious. It was huge for that platform. It was iconic and necessary and really rounded out the oeuvre that Nintendo had as far as video game output. And Metroid 2 was that team that worked on the Game Boy, like Gunpei Yokoi, and the composer on that was really instrumental in working on those games as well. And I think he's like a CEO or something. He's like a big shot now at Creatures or Game Freak, one of the two. And yeah, Hip Tanaka, couldn't think of it, but he did music for that game. He did music for like the Game Boy camera. So it had a really like eclectic kind of, I don't know, like just a crack team on the Game Boy. It was like the handheld team has always been really strange and experimental and trying new things. And Metroid 2 was them saying, let's take one of the most ambitious games on the NES and try to make a version of it or make a sequel for it on the Game Boy. Yeah, similar scenario with Link's Awakening and trying to make fucking Link to the Past for Game Boy, but then making a whole ass new game instead. So Metroid 2 is always really ambitious, but because it's on the Game Boy, you only have these two face buttons and the D-pad, and there's nothing close to a map. I don't think the original Metroid did either, but it was so labyrinthine, and having a 4-color palette to work with meant you got lost a lot. A lot of rooms looked very much the same, and it was all black background. So bringing it forward onto a 3DS, this was obviously the most obvious pick for a game to be remade in that franchise, after especially Zero Mission already remade the first one. So I'm glad they did, and they got to add so much character to it and sort of retrofit, that's a joke on purpose, all of the stuff from the Prime series into the lore and like the vibes of the Chozo, because the Chozo were kind of mentioned and they were auxiliary pieces in Super Metroid. And even in Fusion, they didn't, there's like nothing Chozo in Fusion. But after Zero Mission, they were like, yeah, let's lean whole hog. Let's not have this such separation of church and state from the 2D series and the 3D series. Let's really wrap this up. Let's have a cohesive vision. And Samus Returns really did that in reincorporating the Chozo aspect of it. And I thought just as a whole, it was awesome. And really memorable boss fights. Like I think of the, God, I can't remember the name of it though, the tunneler, big robot boss. Maybe Chris can remember it. But that boss fight was so cool. And they really took that aspect of what a boss fight should be in a Metroid game, which is let's test your ability to utilize all of your movement abilities and then give you the opportunity to fight back. And everything is like a dance. You're doing your movements, you're doing these different challenges, you're reading the opponent, and you're memorizing patterns, pattern recognition, and doing it in a way that every time you fail, you get better at it. And when you do finally win, it is a graceful back and forth battle that makes you feel like a goddamn Samus Aran kicking ass and flipping over bitches and shooting them in the face with rockets. So I really loved that aspect of it. And the Queen Metroid fight at the end is awesome. Just a really good game. And only downside, obviously, is it's on 3DS. I really hope that we get a real version at some point. Like that'd be great. I would buy it. I didn't buy it the first time, but yeah, great ass game.
It was badly in need of being done. The only real way to play that game was on like a physical cart. I can't remember if it even was on the Wii U shop.
I believe it was on the 3DS Ambassador program. I'm not sure if it was on the VC for Wii or Wii U though.
Yeah, it's just like, and of course I have physical hardware. So when I did my first time playing that finally in like 2014, it was on a Super Game Boy because I was like, I'm not doing this on a Game Boy screen. Like, I want this on the TV. Amazing proof of concept also for what a modern Metroid could look like. And I think that because it was also bringing, you know, something that was stuck on physical hardware into a new generation for people to be able to play again, it gave them the ability to say, well, we're going to try and put our own stamp on it. Things like Samus's parry, which became instrumental in the way that Dread worked. Trying to give her some new movement, like some honest to God movement abilities other than I can jump higher and now I can jump infinitely. And now when I jump, I sparkle and hurt things, like, and the speed booster, of course, but you know, being able to, I don't remember what it was called. Yeah. Spider Ball, which was implemented more interestingly. And then there was some kind of like launch ability, I thought, in Samus Returns.
Yeah. You got the power bomb, which would do a directional launch while you're as a morph ball.
That's it. That was really cool to discover also, because that was new. And I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to get over here? And was just playing with different things and like hit a power bomb and went, oh, what the fuck? That's so cool. Using the 3D technology of the 3DS, which, you know, LOL, but in the later iterations, actually having it work as intended and not having to perfectly position the screen and never move your head or else it'll get out of whack with the depth of field, to create a sense of like how deep and vast SR388 was. And you could see like machinery and creatures crawling in the background. Like it really felt alive. And I am so here for them to continue working their way up. I would love for this game to come to Switch also, so I can be able to play the entire series on the whole 2D Metroid series on the Switch. That will be super cool. I would love to see what they could do with Super Metroid with the like movement mechanics of Dread. Like, holy shit, that could be really, really, really cool. This game also has what I think is arguably the best Ridley fight in the series, which was a really welcome surprise. That, you know, the end of Metroid 2 is you kill the queen, you get the baby, and then you go back up to the ship and you leave. And you get up to the surface of the planet in Samus Returns, and here comes fucking Ridley, and here's a fight that you did not see coming with some absolutely awesome in between phase cinematics of these two mortal enemies just beating the shit out of each other. Like at one point, Ridley like flies towards Samus, grabs her helmet with his claws, and just like shoots across the face of SR388, just like bashing her head into the ground and running it into the dirt and smashing her through rocks. I was like, oh my God, like this is what this fight should always look like, instead of just being, you know, face tanking with missiles like it is in every other Metroid game. And set the stage for what they did with the Kraid fight in Metroid Dread, where they're like, we're going to get really big and like operatic with this and not have it be just, you know, 2D Metroid boss fights, which are all kind of the same.
Or Ravenbeak. I mean, yeah, it really put an emphasis on boss fights and using that as a character development trick where you actually get a chance to see your player character be a fucking badass. And it's awesome. I do agree.
This game, I don't think sold super well, but pretty well for a Metroid game.
After the Switch came out.
I know. But do you think that interest helped solidify Dread in Nintendo's mind as something that should be done?
100%. Dread does not exist if Mercury Steam doesn't pitch Nintendo on this remake and they say yes. No way.
Yeah, initially it was pitched as a Fusion remake. They wanted to remake that game, but then Sakamoto liked their idea, but he wanted it to be 2 because 2 needed it more than Fusion does.
Very cool. I chose a game that is both not very good and also one that I never completed. But I feel like this is a time to shine some love on those sort of C-tier games that we appreciate, because those have no chance of making the top 100 and have no chance of even being talked about in the top 100 the way we talked about something like Mario 3D Land when we talked about 3D World and Pick Your Pokemon, right? Like these games that like, yeah, we did 10 minutes on those on the 6-hour podcast last year. This is a game I don't think I've ever brought up on the podcast, but Nick, you'll remember it because I bought it or at least started playing it when you and Trevor were down in Eugene the year Sun and Moon came out, and that is Dragon Ball Fusions, which is an incredibly odd game. It's very bizarre. You're able to create your own Dragon Ball character. They're all chibi characters. Like it's a total goofy, like kids looking game. But at the heart of it, it is a turn-based strategy game. But it is unlike any sort of turn-based strategy game that I've played. I think maybe most similar, as far as what I've played, is it kind of reminds me of South Park, where you've got the sort of grid, except the goal is to either reduce your opponent's HP to 0 or sumo style knock them out of the ring. So playing your position on the battlefield can be a lot more important. At the time, Dragon Ball games, they were all trying to be so edgy, and they were all retelling the same story. And this was like maybe a year after Xenoverse came out, which sort of was able to merge sort of the Dragon Ball goofiness with the Dragon Ball edginess and tell a unique story. And of course, that was multiverse, and now we're so burnt out on it. But at the time, it was such a fucking refreshing way to experience these characters without having to be tied to, let's do the Saiyan Saga again, and let's go to Namek again, and do the whole fucking rigmarole. And so Fusion sort of capitalized on that idea. So you get to join this world, create your own character. The timeline is all wishy-washy. I don't know if it's like interdimensional or if it's time travel. I don't remember the details, but you're able to fight all these different characters from all these different times. The whole premise of the game is that you and a friend want to host like the greatest tournament ever, very Dragon Ball. And so now, you're going out and recruiting characters basically to fight in this tournament. The whole shtick of this game, it's called Fusions for a reason. You can fuse with pretty much any fucking character in the game and make some absolute ridiculous combinations. And then you can get different fusions between known characters. So let me just read you a couple of the characters here. Rigoldo? Who do you think Rigoldo is, Chris?
Who is Raccoon and Goldo?
It's Goldo with Raccoon's hair, dude. Let's go. It's so sick. Genyuza?
Ginyu and Frieza.
You can go Chialdo, which is Chaozu and Goldo. They love fusing with Goldo. He's a creepy little bastard. He's a creepy little... You can go like Kid Gohan and Krillin. Majin Hercule.
That's awesome.
Is it just Boo with a fro? Please tell me it's just Boo with a fro.
It's Boo with a
mustache.
fro and a handlebar mustache.
Post it,
Brother.
Put it in chat.
Let me get a picture up here for you. It is so amazing, dude. So anyway, soft reviews. This is like a 70 on Metacritic, I think.
Where does this rank amongst the Metacritic rated Dragon Ball games or anime games in general? Because I think a 72, that's like top 10% if I had to guess. Because there's been a lot of Dragon Ball games and they're all pretty bad.
Let me Google all Dragon Ball games by Metascore and see if there's a page that aggregates this for me.
Someone probably has. Yeah, there's probably DragonBallReviews.net on GeoCities or something. Hasn't been updated in 17 years, but they had really good information before that.
I'm just seeing Hercule Boo, whatever the fuck his name was.
Majin Hercule, dude.
Majin Hercule, man.
Not the mustache.
It's so good, man. We got him, boys.
Dude, that outfit and that portly little body is pretty good. And the receding hairline.
Yeah. Anyway, that's Dragon Ball Fusions. Maybe I should go back and play this. Maybe I should play this on an emulator with a real controller.
How did it work with multiple screens and using the bottom as a touchscreen? Did it do really anything with that besides it being like a menu navigator?
Probably just a menu. I have no recollection of that whatsoever. I did not watch a YouTube video about this game beforehand to refresh myself. I'm just pulling straight out the memory banks, boys.
Nice. I love that.
Highly recommend, Chris, if you want to fuck around with your 3DS for some ungodly reason. I wonder if this game is cheap. Can you still get it on Amazon new?
Probably, brother. There was like some Dragon Ball games on PS2 you could buy new on Amazon as of like a month or two ago.
I bought 2 different copies of Dragon Ball Z Legendary Super Warriors sealed in box as recently as like 2015 from Amazon.com.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, you found it. $24.
$24. Console Crusade Top 100 honorable mention.
That's a pretty historic low. I would probably pick that up. I mean, as of December last year, you could have gotten it new for 15, but 24 ain't bad.
24 ain't bad. Chris, what's your top 100 honorable mention?
There are a lot of surprisingly good RPGs on the 3DS that are unfortunately saddled to the 3DS forever. This is probably not one of them, but it is an RPG that it's an RPG that I really enjoy. And from a franchise, a once mighty franchise that is now all but extinct. I'm referring, of course, to Mario and Luigi Paper Jam, the final honest to God outing of Paper Mario in an RPG game, a turn-based RPG game. Rip for sure. Paper joke. So this game is, it's in the Mario and Luigi world. Luigi opens a book that contains the Paper Mario universe, because as we know from like the beginning of the Paper Mario games, we're like opening the storybook and like, here's all the paper things folding out. So Luigi opens that book like the absolute fuckwit that he is. And the Paper Mario universe just pours into the real universe. And Bowser and Paper Bowser team up and kidnap Peach and Paper Peach. And Paper Mario joins you, and you have a trio party going around having turn-based shenanigans. This game was fun to play. It really had a lot of what made Mario and Luigi great in terms of like the humor. Everybody just absolutely razzing Luigi for being such a fuck up the whole game. And then when it comes time to actually like talk him up to try to do something successful, there's a lot of meta jokes. Like this came out right around the time that they did the Year of Luigi thing, where they were really trying to promote him when it was like New Super Mario U plus Luigi or whatever the fuck it was called. And Paper Peach is like, you have a whole year named after you. And I'm just like, God, that's so fucking funny that they would just slide that in there. With a lot of the cool papery things that Mario could do, that Paper Mario could access certain areas by like, turning to the side and going two-dimensional that the other brothers could not. There was some fun like perspective-based things where you had to find paper toads that were like hidden against objects or right behind objects, like flat. And the battle system was super dope. Just like Mario and Luigi, each bro is mapped to one button, and then Paper Mario is mapped to a third button, and they all have distinct and unique attacks they could do. There are bros moves that Mario and Luigi can do, as well as trio moves, all of which involve some kind of like paper craft. So this includes things like, what's the first one? Trio Racket, where Paper Mario will fold the enemy you're fighting into a two-dimensional paper, and then you'll take turns pressing whichever button the tennis ball is coming to hit it back towards the boss. So it's a little like button matching mini game to try to build damage. There's one where you fold Paper Mario into a shuriken and like spin him up with Mario and Luigi and throw him. And the final one, which is so extra, is just literally a paper ball meteor, like a giant crumbled ball of paper, like casting meteor in a Final Fantasy game that plummets to the earth. And you have to hit specific buttons to like get it up in the air, specific buttons to land on top of it to knock it down. And then if you hit A, B, Y, all three of the attack buttons simultaneously when it hits the ground, you get a damage boost. There was also a sort of like paper kaiju battle mechanic where you would be in giant paper craft versions of like Mario or Luigi or Toad or Peach, and have to do like arena based combat with other paper craft enemies. That was like not my favorite feature, but it did break up some of the otherwise, very similar RPG type gameplay. But it was just really cool. And, I bought that game at the time at Nate's behest because he was like, if we want a real Paper Mario RPG again, we need to like buy the game where they're at least trying to give us Paper Mario in an RPG. Obviously, it was not successful, although we're getting Thousand Year Door remake. So yay, I guess I did that. I don't know. This game's fun. It's just a fun the last, what I remember being good Mario and Luigi game, and certainly the last time we got Paper Mario in his natural habitat. It's like a 76, I think. Metacritic average, so middling, as I may say.
Truly.
But fun. And a good time. Just a good time.
I have not played one of these games in a very long time. As we've lamented many a time, it's unfortunate how Nintendo split the Mario RPG franchises and then just slowly ruined both of them. Glad we're getting Paper Mario Thousand Year Door Remake this year. And obviously on the heels of Super Mario RPG. So hopefully this is the beginning of a beautiful renaissance for a beloved niche in the Mario franchise. Niche, bitch.
It works either way. Yeah, I loved the original Mario and Luigi, but never played any of the sequels. So would like to at some point, just don't know when I'll find the time or the ability. I mean, but they're all DS and 3DS basically after the first one. So
Yeah.
also, how fucked up is it that there is a Mario and Luigi game with Paper Mario, but Paper Luigi still is not allowed to have his own adventure.
It's bullshit.
Backseated yet again.
Nick, do you still have a 3DS? Or I know you had one had been pilfered.
Yes, my original 3DS that I purchased was in fact pilfered from my storage unit, but I did. I still have the one that I bought after that when I bought one for probably X and Y.
Oh, okay. So that was before that. Wow. Do we want to blow through some of the news? I don't know how much commentary we'll really have, but it's worth noting that things have happened this week. It's been a big week in the gaming industry.
A lot of things. Yeah, I mean, let's briefly go over it. So I just wanted to, call out, yes, there's still more industry layoffs. I think Sony was the most recent one to have a big, yes, we too are cutting. It's unfortunate. We don't know how we could have stopped this, but we have to fire 8% of our staff. The most of which being they closed down London studio, which was known for The Getaway back in the day on the PS2, and also doing some VR games. So it's more Sony saying, we don't want to do VR. We did this. I don't know why we did this. Similarly, Guerrilla got hit with layoffs. Their most recent game was the Horizon Call of the Mountain VR game. Bungie got hit with layoffs. Naughty Dog got hit with layoffs. A lot of these studios that are putting out good games that sell well are still just getting hit with layoffs. It's really unfortunate. It's irritating and it sucks, and it's mostly because the labor laws and just workforce laws in the US are allowing of such big cuts, which emboldens these companies to make really no forethought into their hiring process. Like they hire on all these people because they're making a big bet, they're making big swings. They think this infinite money is never going to run out. They got these huge booms from COVID and selling tons of games and tons of consoles, and they said, "Oh, well, this is just our life now, so let's hire like it is going to be have longevity." But now, oh wait, sowing is so fun. Oh no, reaping, this sucks. So
No.
the reaping sucks, and the people who suffer for it are the people that got hired, not the ones who made the decision to hire all those people. Because why would they ever get any sort of recourse? So yeah, just a little bit of that.
With the lack of unions, which is another thing we have lamented at length on this podcast, there's no protection for these people.
The problem is everyone is firing, which means nobody is hiring. So what do you do after that severance runs out in 3 to 6 months? Like, cool, you got that cushion, like that's great, but you're doing unrestorable harm to the workforce by everyone following this trend. And a lot of commentary has been made about how Japan doesn't have this problem because Japan hires very slowly because it is so hard for them to fire people. It is almost impossible to get laid off from work unless you are like doing crimes. So that's why Nintendo of Japan, Sony of Japan, all these other big Japanese companies, Bandai Namco, I don't think they've ever had historic layoffs. I mean, I've never read news about it. I don't know if it's just swept under the rug or just doesn't happen. It seems like it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's mutual respect in that workforce. Like there is pride taken in being a part of that company, and that company wants to cultivate and value the people who are working for it. Like it's big. Like it's way less of like, oh yeah, I work here, but that's not really what I'm about. Like there is pride in being a part of that and doing good work for that. Which starts from, labor protections, for fuck's sake, unionize everybody, and also not being slaves to quarterly over quarterly income and having an extremely short-sighted worldview. Like you said, Nick, oh, here's this big boom. Gee, I wonder why that is. Oh, everyone has nothing else to do but play video games. There's stimulus money in everybody's pocket. Everyone with half a brain knows this is going to lead to like a hot economy there's going to be inflation. We're going to have to cut jobs. But they can't be bothered to think of that because it's like, well, we can maximize our profit in the next fiscal year if we hire a bunch of people right now and try and take advantage of it. No foresight whatsoever. No foresight whatsoever.
No. Yeah, and it's just a dog and pony show trying to appease shareholders because there is so much shareholder influence over these Western companies, and you don't really see a lot of that and in other countries as much. So it is a lot of well, yes, we're making a lot of money now, but we have to keep making more and more and more. So it's always it's not a long-term growth strategy. It's a short-term growth strategy. How do we like quickly turn this over into something bigger? Like line has to go up.
We are in a full-blown recession right now. Cost of living is record highs. Cost of goods is absurd right now. Everyone's talking about it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. They've been saying that for 4 years, and it's like, we're in the middle of it. There is no work to be had out there. Nobody is hiring. The people who are hiring are paying like shit. They're forcing everyone to come back to the offices. And like, oh, well, unemployment's the lowest it's been in however many years. And it's like, does that matter when minimum wage in the Midwest is $2.50? Like, things are dire in this country right now. And these industries are not immune. Like, every company has had mass layoffs in the last 12 months. Every single company.
A lot of it's self-inflicted. Like a lot of reasoning is because the cost of their office space is so high. It's like, why are you still paying for an office? COVID proved that work from home is a super valid strategy, and you can diversify your workforce outside of the most expensive cities in the fucking country.
Because you can't surveil your workforce if they're working from home. And that's the fucking fact of the matter, is that the same amount of work is getting done, but they can't push people to be even more productive if they can't verify the way that they're spending their hours.
This is, and of course, this is so much bigger than video games, but when we move away from performance-based metrics and literally just becomes, we have people for 8 to 10 hours a day and we're trying to get as much work done as we can so we can maximize our profits. They don't care if you're getting the same amount of work done at home. They care that you might be able to get 2 hours more done if exactly they were able to fucking lord over you. But it's also, I think it's less about surveilling the workers, and it's another way of just controlling people. When people work from home and people are happy, you're giving them power, right? Like we saw the mass, I mean, during COVID, on one hand you had all these layoffs, but then you had the fucking mass quitting. People were saying, fuck this. I want to be home with my kids. I want to have a life. I don't want to be a slave to the grind. So when you enable people to work from home and be happier and have some agency in their fucking lives, that is dangerous for corporations. That is dangerous for shareholders. You have to exercise your power over your fucking wage slaves if you want to continue to grow in profit every year. And of course, we're talking about entertainment and video games and yada yada. None of it matters, but it matters because these are real fucking people with lives.
Total like segue, but also super related. We've had these layoffs. Everyone's been laying people off. I think Take-Two had a big round of layoffs a couple weeks ago. EA. I mean, all the big AAA companies have had big layoffs. Related, Embracer also just like taking dump after dump, doing stupid things. They rose up during the COVID sort of boom of really cheap lending money, and they bought a bunch of studios. And one of the not even studios but publishers they bought was Saber Interactive, which has multiple developers underneath them, and they just bought themselves out of Embracer. I think it was a $300 million deal, if I remember correctly. Saber, like a totally like self-sustaining AA like publisher for hire, developers for hire kind of group, before getting swallowed up into this massive entity, are now back out of it. They got themselves out. And related to that, I don't even know what the money deal was, if there was one, but a favorite developer of EJ's, Toys for Bob,
Shout out.
under Activision, I think, did they do Crash 4 and they did the Spyro Trilogy remake?
Correct.
They were, 3D platformer kids game developer under Activision, Big Daddy Activision. But I believe after they put out Crash 4, was it then that did Crash 4?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, because they had Toys for Bob, and then there was also Vicarious Visions, which were kind of similar studios in their ethos. But Toys for Bob is now, after Activision just got bought by Microsoft, Toys for Bob is now fully independent. And what's going on there? That's very strange. That is I think, an interesting way to reduce your workforce. Like if that's what people need, if that's what the shareholders demand, you can reduce your workforce, but maintain the structure of that company, and they can figure it out themselves. They can figure their own way. A lot of these companies, like I said with Saber, they've been independent before, so they have that structure, they have that history. I don't know what Toys for Bob was doing before they were formed inside of Activision. I'm not sure their history, but I think it's really interesting. This is a very unprecedented thing. I have not seen this happen very frequently. I've seen like developers get traded around, shopped out to other studios, sold to other studios, like other publishers before, but buying independency is very interesting in this sort of ecosystem.
When I saw the Toys for Bob news, Well, I joked that, mass layoffs incoming, because are they going to have the cash to float that entire studio? They don't own any of the IPs they're known for. They can't make Crash 5, but it's a good middle ground. It's like, hey, let us call our own shot here. We're going to try to do something on our own. We clearly have shown competency, and I hope that works for them, and I hope they're able to do something that keeps that company alive and keeps their legacy moving forward, and then maybe bought again when things are better down the road. But it reminded me when I saw this, it's sort of this vicious cycle in like the music industry, where it's like every little indie band wants to get signed to a record label because they're going to float them the cash. And of course, you don't understand how predatory these labels are, and they're really just loaning you that money to make a record, and then they're taking everything from you for the rest of fucking time. So on one hand, it's like, great, you're going to help us like make a record and like start a career. We're never going to make money ever again. And then you see these artists who do break through, buying their catalogs back or re-recording their catalogs so that they can make the money off of it instead of it all going to these other companies. So it's sort of like the dream of like, we got signed to a label. Oh my God, we're not making any money. We're going to go independent again and do it all ourselves. And some bands find that success. Some bands go right back to needing someone to foot the fucking bill. You look at a company like CD Projekt Red. They're a fucking indie developer, made some of the biggest games on the fucking planet.
Yeah.
I'm glad these opportunities exist instead of, hey, by the way, you guys are all laid off and we're going to shut you down and we're going to sit on anything you have going on or anything you've done or ever will do. And it's just gone forever, deleted, bye, never to be heard from again. I guess that's a good compromise during a fucking terrible situation.
Similar note to that, just to piggyback again off of developers becoming independent or publishers becoming independent. Some other sort of strange things like Control. Remedy just bought the rights to Control back from their original publisher, 505. I think it's cool. I think it's always great when a developer has control and ownership in perpetuity of IP they've created. That adds to their value and it makes them more in control of what they can do with it. And I think creators should have the right to do what they want with their creations. Anything that enables that is a net good for me. Doesn't matter what you think of the property or the people who made it. If they have control over it, then that's a benefit. And then a couple weeks ago, fucking FromSoft bought the trademark for Elden Ring from Bandai Namco, but I have no idea what that means because it's not the IP, it's the trademark. So it's just the words Elden Ring. So it's harder for them to do other spin-off things based on the name, I guess. I don't know.
I'm not smart enough to know how these things work in the industry.
Nobody is.
I'm not a lawyer.
It's like that for a reason. It's hard to understand on purpose.
I'm not a lawyer, but I do understand that when Nintendo, for example, files a lawsuit against Tropic Haze, the makers of the wildly popular emulator Yuzu, when they say that they are facilitating piracy at a colossal scale, that's fucking bullshit. Well, I guess it depends on how you interpret that, right? What's the intent there? Big news this week.
Yeah.
In that regard.
This segment was recorded before Tropic Haze settled with Nintendo for $2.4 million, ending development of both Citra and Yuzu, and forfeiting their respective domains and code repositories. Stay tuned for a proper reaction next episode.
I think this is technically, is this the first time Nintendo's filed a lawsuit against an emulator creator? I think it is.
I don't know. Normally what we hear about is the scary cease and desists.
For ROM sites and stuff.
They're either exercising their direct influence over what exists online and having it taken down, or they are flexing the threat of a lawsuit to scare small teams away from doing things. And that almost always works. Without completely opening the can of worms again, we have talked about piracy several times in this podcast, including going over these studies that have shown that piracy does not have a net negative effect on sales from these publishers. It's potentially a neutral, it's potentially a net positive for some of these companies. I mean, Nintendo's going to have to come in and demonstrate, based on the wording of the lawsuit, that there is significant financial loss for them because of the software that this company is making. And again, this Tropic Haze, Yuzu is not stealing secrets from Nintendo, right? They haven't infiltrated Nintendo's offices.
That you and I know of. I mean, trademarks and copyrights extend to the code that runs the software as well. So it depends on how far they've outstep their boundaries, because there have been emulators in the past that have been shut down because they include copyrighted or trademarked code.
This smacks of Nintendo attacking a small company in bad faith in order to set precedent. Because obviously they don't like that these emulators exist and that there are ways to play these games. And of course, my stance is that it is never unethical to steal from billionaires. That's all I'll say about that. I have no moral opposition to the idea of you telling a billionaire to fuck off and stealing, whatever. I don't fucking care. Do what you're going to do. I know that trickles down into smaller developers and distributors, and there's like real people that end up being affected if Nintendo were to just say, all right, well, fuck everything. We're going to just not exist anymore, I guess, which is, of course, ludicrous to even suggest. But at the core of it, stealing from billionaires is never a bad thing. But it is an illegal thing in a lot of instances, and that's where things get messy. This is bad faith to me. They're trying to set a precedent so they can go after anyone and fucking everyone. Analog, guess what? You don't fucking exist anymore. You're making custom FPGA boards based on our patented technology. Boom, vaporized. If Nintendo goes through with this and this doesn't settle and they actually have a ruling in their favor over this, that is a fucking terrible thing for games preservation, for poor people. And even though I think piracy, like this is a fraction of, especially if you account for mobile and PC gaming, but even just looking at the console market, a fraction, an insignificant fraction of players are doing so illegally. Even if you throw out the whole argument about like, I'm going to back up my games, like that's a whole conversation. Like no one's ever backed up their fucking games. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
That's bad faith.
Yeah. But it's the loophole that we have to use to do illicit things. I don't do that. I'm just saying. I give my money to Nintendo because I'm a fucking mark. But
yeah, it doesn't help that just the DMCA in general has been extremely bad.
Vague and predatory.
Since its inception. Yes, exactly. I don't disagree necessarily that this is Nintendo trying to like make a statement. I don't think that there's the kind of slippery slope kind of ramifications that you're implying about them using this like on the back of this, going after something like Analog, because they don't sell something that plays Game Boy games right now, right? They sell something that plays Switch games, and they want to protect their ability to sell Switch games, and Yuzu does a lot to circumvent that. And they have a Patreon in which gives you early access to builds that are better suited for playing Tears of the Kingdom, the game that leaked 2 weeks before it came out. And they have people that were in Yuzu's Discord, and they have the fucking screenshots, brother. Like
they got
come carrying receipts. Exactly. So this ain't looking too good for Yuzu.
No.
There are other Switch emulators. They could have gone after Ryujinx. They could have gone after, I can't remember the name of the other one, but they went after Yuzu. They went after the one with the wildly popular Patreon. They're going after the big fish in this scenario.
Yep.
So they're making a statement, and they think they have solid ground to stand on, because Nintendo, I don't think they want to file a lawsuit that they lose. That is incredibly against their MO, and that would also set precedent. That would set precedent against them, and they do not want that either. They allow a lot of things to go under the radar because they don't want to worry about what happens in the future. So this seems like, to me, Yuzu's in big trouble. Also, Ryujinx and their developers are like cautiously opening champagne glasses because there goes one of their biggest competitors. But also, is the sword then hanging over their necks? I don't know.
Yeah, you've got to think, if they're not just going to send cease and desist, and they're not going to do their typical saber rattling cycle like y'all talked about, they have to have something pretty incontrovertible. What even would that be? Like, I again, I'm too stupid to understand how any of this works, but are they accusing them of, if they say they're facilitating piracy, that would be an implication that they are either allowing for or taking part in themselves the distribution of like ROM files? Like, what are they saying? Like, what are they implying here?
They're not distributing the games. They're not using Nintendo's IP. Although the Patreon, I didn't know about the Patreon, Nick. See, that's where it gets funky, because they're like, hey, play Breath of the Wild on Yuzu 3.2.1. And it's like, you guys are in trouble now.
That's big red flags, right? That definitely raises an eyebrow from even you, who are totally fine with people emulating and distributing ROMs all the fuck they want, because if you're not going to buy the game, you're not going to buy the game. An illegal download doesn't hurt Nintendo. There's the old 4chan screenshot of like downloads game illegally, deletes it, downloads it again a million times. Developer just lost $60 million. Like, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
That is not a like limited resource that you are cutting into. You're not hurting anyone by downloading a game. But I think Nintendo has that aspect of it, but they're wrapping it up into a bunch of other things. And then that makes it a stronger case. But I don't know what they're going to do with that in the future. What does this precedent setting mean for Nintendo? Or is it more dangerous for other companies that have also been pretty litigious in the past, like Bethesda and Rockstar? Like, does that give them more leeway to go fucking scorched earth on modders and people distributing versions of their game that they're just not happy with, or whatever, because they have carte blanche say in what happens to the game after they put it out? Like, I don't know. Bungie also with cheaters in their games and how they've gone after them hard and with good cause, because a lot of times they're people who are like scumbag, like bad people who are straight up like doxing developers and that kind of shit, like real life bad people, as opposed to those who develop software that play Switch games.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how this plays out. There are two options. Tropic Haze folds, right? They just say, fuck this, and they go underground and figure out a way to circumvent this completely before this lawsuit goes any further, or it just plays out for the next several years until it settles. And whether that is them agreeing not to do X, Y, or Z, or that's financial damages, I mean, who knows how it plays out.
Don't necessarily think they have to prove damage as far as loss of sales, but also them profiting off of Nintendo's IP is also a big no-no. So I think those things in concert together gives them a much better shot of proving harm.
I'm going to go to their Patreon here. I'm curious if...
I think they're making like $50K a month, and I think that spiked around Tears of the Kingdom because they did offer an earlier build of their software that played it better than the competitors, and also what they offered at their free tier or whatever. Like, it's
$30,000 a month.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a cursory search here. I want to see how often they actually mention Nintendo IP in relation to...
Oh, they've already gone back and like tried to delete that. I don't know if... Oh, they're definitely scrubbing.
Dirty delete.
They're not going to keep that just sitting there.
Well, you would assume that deleting those things only further points to your guilt or otherwise. Like, Nintendo has everything on this Patreon already, so scrubbing it is only sending further red flags.
They weren't smart enough to not get sued in the first place.
Well, that's the thing, is you can sue anybody for any fucking thing in this country. Literally. So being sued doesn't necessarily mean anything other than someone with money is trying to scare someone without money.
It's just an unusual step for them. I think that's why it's not newsworthy that big company sues small company. It's that Nintendo is suing anyone. I'm fascinated, honestly, just to see that. I almost wish it would go to trial so that we could see what comes out.
It'd be nice to know like what's actually good and what's bad.
Yeah, what's coming out in Discovery and what do they have that we're not aware of, and also like what is the exact argument they are trying to make, and how is that then interpreted in a court of law? Because so we have speculated, of course, that we think they wouldn't actually sue if they didn't feel like they could go to trial and win. But if they do go to trial and they lose, that could protect so much of the stuff that we've talked about, like preservationists, because God knows these companies literally like, hey, why don't you, remake such and such game or upload it to such and such platform? And they're like, oh, we don't have any of the source code anymore. We lost it. Like, they just didn't think it was a thing that they should hold on to. So sometimes these are the only folks out there who are saving these really important pieces of history. Could be a big win for the emulating community. It could be a big win for the preservation community.
Fellas, let's jump really quick. I don't want to do a deep dive. We have like 40-ish minutes, and we still got to do what we've been playing, and I want to talk Final Fantasy VII Remake, goddammit. But the Pokemon Presents happened like the day before last week's episode released, after we recorded, so we couldn't talk about it. But a couple things happened. We didn't get Let's Go 2. We didn't get Black and White Remake. We didn't get any Virtual Console Pokemon games, but we did get a new Legends title, among some other things that you guys can touch on if anything stuck out to you.
No, thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure Nick will have something to say about the card game, but Legends ZA, ZA, for all of you across the pond.
Across the pond. I'm gonna for future reference, I'm saying Z to A because it's clearly A to Z but backwards.
Last week, I made the joke that, black and white, it's the only generation that was so bad Nintendo had to like immediately remake it to try and correct their mistakes. How much of that is true? How much of that is me projecting? Who knows? But
Not remakes, for the record. Continue.
they're not remakes. It's sequel that doesn't do very much different than the first game, but does fix a lot of gameplay elements. I remember people liking Black and White 2 a lot more than Black and White. Anyway, they were 18 fucking months apart. Unprecedented for Nintendo. Very weird. Why would they do that? Anyway, even here they're admitting like, no. We're just going to skip all that. We're going straight to the 3DS, straight to X and Y. We're going back to Kalos, albeit in Legends form. The trailer was sort of weird and cyberpunky. You got the wireframe of the city being built out, and I had sort of gone immediately into my conspiracy brain, was like, we're going to the fucking future, and people have been arguing about that online all week.
I think it's pretty clearly future and past.
Yeah, totally.
Z to A maybe suggesting we're moving in that direction, future to past.
I think it's gonna be like Link to the Past style, going back and forth, or I guess more Oracle or Ocarina of Time, future and past. Like you're gonna have people having problems in the future and you go to the past to fix them, and then people in the past have things that they can only get from the future, that kind of thing.
The sort of cyberpunky Tron graphics, the city being mapped out, didn't feel very like 1800s. I mean, it didn't feel like, oh, we're gonna go back.
Ancient history like Arceus was.
Right. This is a very different sort of take on it. And the fact that they say it's going to take place all within the city, well, that leads me to believe either we'll be going forward and backwards in time, so that you can like be in nature catching Pokemon, because you can't do that in the fucking city if that's where we're going to be constrained to. Or I had gone real conspiracy brain and was like, this is going to be the future. You're going to be going to these biomes via virtual reality to catch Pokemon in the virtual world.
I think you can do both. I think there's room for both.
Yeah, sure. I didn't like Legends very much. I only put a few hours into it. I thought it was ugly and obtuse, but I see the formula and how that can be iterated on in an interesting way. And I hope that this fully realizes that concept in a way that none of their recent games have. So that's the Game Freak promise, boys.
Heard. And even as somebody who really liked Legends, it did look terrible. It looked really bad. I would love a more polished version of what was, to me, a really satisfying gameplay loop. And a satisfying way to approach something like the Pokedex that wasn't just, throw ball, get creature, check, that wanted you to be engaging with each Pokemon in the Pokedex, either with like repeated captures or evolving it a certain number of times, or using certain kinds of moves a certain number of times, like all kinds of little conditions to like actually research each creature in a way that makes sense. No clue what that will mean for something like Z to Alpha. Somebody pointed out online that in X and Y, and I had fucking forgotten this, there was a character named AZ.
Yeah, Az.
Yeah,
The
Az.
ancient man who created the ultimate weapon.
Yeah, the immortal big bitch.
Right, exactly. And that, Az and Floette seemingly, fade out and we don't really get anything about them. Also that there's the ghost in Lumwa Tower that appears behind you and then says, no, it's not you, and then disappears, and then it's just like never explained again. So people are one theory is that this is the Pokemon Z that they wanted to make. But for either technological limitations or because they didn't think that they could actually like get the sales they wanted, they sort of shelved, and now have a different way to approach it under the Legends umbrella so that they can actually do all the stuff they wanted to do that is clearly not what you do in a mainline Pokemon game. I don't know, but I'm excited. I'm glad that we're getting another one. I had consumed a fair amount of the Kool-Aid making the rounds with regards to like Let's Go Johto. So I was sad that we didn't see that. I had even kind of come around to I would probably buy a Black and White, even if it's in chibi style. I don't want to call them remakes, but updates is what I will call them. Just because it's been so long, I don't remember. I played Black and White before I played Platinum, because that was in that weird period that we've all talked about in high school where we kind of stopped playing Pokemon games, and then like some of us came back, some of us stayed off the wagon, so to speak. But we didn't get any of that. We did get a Legends title though, but not until 2025, which I think is maybe the bigger piece of news in that it is something that is tangible. We're not getting a Pokemon game this year. That's wild. And the third and fourth quarter calendar year for Nintendo is looking more and more dire by the day, by the week, by the month.
Don't you worry. That's Summer Direct. No.
Okay, buddy. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what I think we're getting from I'll tell you what I think we're getting from the Summer Direct, and that's Metroid Prime, because at this point, that is the only title that's even remotely in the ether that would be a complete surprise. And I don't know why we would get, hey, look, we're doing Paper Mario again, and also it's coming out sometime in 2024. We don't know when, and not other stuff that's also coming out in that time frame if they had other stuff to show in that time frame. But we're all speculating here. At the moment, the larder is bare. And I am curious to see Metroid Prime 4. What is going to fill Metroid Prime 4, the third and fourth quarter release Metroid Prime 4 windows?
Yeah, talk about cope.
Now you gotta, dude. This will be the year of so many remakes. Like, we've had a lot of remakes over the past 5 to 6 years of Switch, but this is primed to be the year.
Be the year.
Yeah, Prime 2 and 3. I think we're getting those, but I don't think we're getting Prime 4 this year, buddy. I'm sorry.
Let's go. Chris and I went pretty deep on this. He was huffing some copium as it looked like the partner direct was going to be a partner direct and not a proper Nintendo direct. And he's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. The Switch 2 has to come out this year because look at the slate of games. And I tried to make a very salient point, Chris, that the year before a new console is always bad. Like, the biggest game in the fiscal year leading up to the Wii U's launch was Mario Party 9, a year removed from Zelda, the bad one, which was in the previous fiscal year. And we're looking at the exact same template here. The biggest game in the previous fiscal year before Switch 2 will have been Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. And then at that point, Chris, we were just arguing over whether it was going to be a Christmas launch, November launch, or a Q4 launch in spring, like the Switch did.
Yeah,
the parallels are there. It's going to be a quiet year. It's going to be a quiet year because we know a new console is right around the corner.
It's just strange they haven't announced it yet. NX was announced by like 2015, but also the Wii U was a huge failure. But
we want to build some hype. Let people know a new console is coming. It is going to replace your Switch. It's also going to play your Switch games, but it's going to be bigger. It's going to be better. You do not want another Wii U to happen because everyone on the planet owns a Switch and they are thinking to themselves, why would I need to upgrade this? I can play all my games on it. They need the PR cycle. They need to convince the world that this is a must-have device. And shadow dropping it.
They could hold their breath for as long as they wanted to if there were titles for the Switch coming out this year. But if there aren't, besides Peach, Showtime, and a Thousand Year Door remake, then there's really nothing keeping them from boosting their fourth quarter profits by saying, yeah, and also guess what's coming out next year, bitches. That's right.
Bitches.
Yeah.
Shareholders.
Yeah, I assume that it's not going to be a particularly great end of year now that we know that Switch 2 is not coming. I didn't think it would be this dire, though. I did and have been and will continue to say I think the second half of this year broadly is going to be very bad for new games. And this is crazy to the degree this is going. I'm hoping, again, give me some more cope, that, some of the smoke about, like, they were ramping up to do some Metroid marketing and that there's going to be there was going to be some news and was going to get a bit of a feature, which, boy, it is a dire year for Nintendo if they were considering a Metroid Direct. And I say this as somebody covered in Metroid tattoos. I mean, could Mercury Steam be sitting on another remake? Could Prime 2 and 3 is a matter of when, not if. And then at least give us a goddamn trailer. We know they hired a company that makes trailers, so at some point we're gonna see a trailer. Will it be sooner than later? I don't know. I really hope so. It would be great to have that be like the game that's coming out at the end of this year and nobody gets to talk about any other Nintendo stuff. We just get to talk about Metroid Prime 4. I would love that.
It'd be good for your league chances. That'll be a solid 85 that you'll need.
So it will be the worst reviewed Metroid Prime game by 5 to 6 full critic points. That's what you're telling me.
Probably. That game's been in development hell, dude. It's been in a blender.
Aren't you the guy, Mr. Homeworld
8
3?
years.
Yes. Aren't you the guy, Mr. Homeworld 3, that says a delay is never a bad thing for the quality of a game?
A delay itself is never inherently a bad thing.
You see that moment where that beat of, wait, how do I get out of this?
No.
The trap is closing in.
The gears turn.
Completely scrapping the game and hiring a new company to develop it is a bad thing.
A new company that developed all of the other games in that series. That is nothing but a green flag. And which is why I will continue to wait patiently as long as I have to, because it can only mean positive things, or it would just get
Wait
shit canned.
patiently while you're huffing copium that it's this year.
Yeah, give me another can. Babe, can you give me another can? Thanks, babe. Tank's getting a little empty. Tiffany's about to come in here and go, can of what? Yeah, I don't know. It'd be great. It'd be cool. It's not going to be an 85. That's fucking crazy. If corruption on the Wii can pull a 90, this game can outscore an 85.
Pokemon Legends Z to A has a better chance of getting an 85 than
85 ceiling. 85 ceiling.
That's not a hot take at all. Yeah, Pokemon games aren't good. Newsflash. The best Pokemon games are middling at best. The deep
85,
lore.
some of the best rated games.
Yeah. All right. Let's do what we've been playing.
EJ, no. Let's talk about cards.
Oh, gosh. Okay. You want to talk about cards? I knew you would.
Did that not tantalize you at all?
No.
I wish Magic Arena looked that good.
Magic Arena fucks. I love where Magic Arena has gone. Okay. I haven't played Magic in a good while, but it rocks. And no, I'm not interested in this because they focused more on the collecting aspect, which is completely uninteresting to me. I'm not collecting digital ephemera. And B, the Pokemon card game kind of sucks. So I don't want to play it either. I'm not interested in this. Are you?
I don't know.
You would play it.
I don't know.
You would download it. You'd give it a tap, a double tap.
Yeah, I'd download it and try it, see what it's like, but I also don't think I would get wrapped up into the Pokemon trading card game. It's probably better than it was in the 90s. I mean, Magic's better than it was in the 90s.
Sure,
Every
yeah.
card game gets better over time.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, it's probably better, but I don't know if I have the connection to Pokemon that I did in the 90s, so that's kind of a false start right there. And I don't know. I just thought that the presentation was good, and it's better looking than other Pokemon games. Like, the stuff they showed looked like it's representative of the quote-unquote gameplay of the app is going to be. And it looked a lot more polished than Pokemon Go did, any of the Pokemon games on Switch or otherwise. It's one of the best looking products that they've made. So, and I think that's not like an accident. I think the Pokemon trading cards are also really well made and designed and crafted, and visually, like the visual appeal of those cards are pretty distinct and often copied. So it makes sense that the design and the design ethos behind this product would also be pretty stellar. So I don't know. I was just taken aback that they actually showed something good. This was sandwiched between Pokemon Legends CG trailer and fucking Pokemon Sleep and some guy waking up to a Suicune or whatever and being like, okay, great. Pokemon Sleep has the best looking trailer of this direct so far.
Yeah.
And quickly supplanted by Pokemon trading card game.
And you can you can trade.
Yeah, trade and battle other people. I mean, that's cool.
But I mean, even in, I don't know the rules of any of these other things. It's funny. The episode I was just listening to from the backlog, y'all are talking about Magic Arena, or the second Magic the Gathering card game that you were like, this is it, it's changed the game. No idea how like that economy and infrastructure works, but is there precedent for any of these like online card games to have full trading features just like right out of the box? Like Marvel Snap, can you trade cards? Like, I mean, does anything have that?
I don't think so. Not to my knowledge. And I imagine that's largely in part because that can quickly become predatory. And next thing you know, you've got people on eBay like selling rare shit, you know, doing the CSGO thing where it's like skins and shit selling for absurd amounts of money and then getting ripped off in game over real cash. And it just gets crazy quick. I don't know if Hearthstone or Marvel Snap or any of these games, I don't play any of these games other than Magic, and Magic did not have that feature when I was playing it regularly. So the idea of spending real money to play a game And I spent my fair share of cash on Arena. That's one thing. I'm playing a game, something competitive. I'm having fun. I'm engaging with it. Spending money to collect something that exists only on my iPad does not interest me in the slightest. It interests me more if they brought the WotC card frames back. I'll tell you what, but I think Pokemon cards, outside of the full art cards that they do, which are amazing, I think Pokemon cards are probably the ugliest cards in 2024 that have ever existed in a mainstream TCG. They are basic and ugly, and I hate them, and I've hated them for a very long time, and I wish that they would completely overhaul the fucking card frames and make it look less Fisher-Price and more intentional and iterated. They've only gotten worse since we were kids, except for the full arts. Again, wow, if those existed as a kid, we would have been ripping kids off on the playground like nobody's ever fucking seen.
It is interesting, Chris. You bring up a really good point with the trading aspect that is not really encouraged or utilized by other card games on phones and stuff, because it seems like probably these developers or publishers, the people in deciding where the money goes, would rather you spend money on a chance to buy something and on the things they can control via FOMO, where it's like, oh, this is in the shop this week, and then you get a limited time to purchase it. So if you want to buy a single, you can buy this single for this set price, but you got to buy it by Friday because you don't know what's going to be next. You don't know what the next chance is going to be. They would much rather control the flow of cards. So it seems like that's a really good indicator to me that this isn't going to be super predatory and weird. As far as cracking packs, and you get 2 free packs a day, that's like whatever. People give away free packs ad nauseum. But it makes me think that it's not going to be super shitty and make you like buy an Articuno for $8 or whatever, limited time offer.
Would be great.
Because you can trade for it. That's great.
Would be great if true. But I just like that that's a thing that they're including, that was the fun of owning Pokemon cards as a kid. They're clearly appealing to us here, our generation's like, hey, remember how cool it felt to like take your allowance and go buy 2 boosters and like pull boosters in, see what you pulled from those boosters, like in the shop right there. Like,
yeah,
that shit fucking rocked. And they're like, we're going to give that to you digitally, and you're always going to have packs to open. So you're always going to get that dopamine hit of like, what am I going to get? What am I going to get? And then going to trade with your friends. Like, look what I have. What do you have? And busting out the binders and the sleeves and being like, oh, look at this. And oh man, that's so fucking cool. And yeah, I had my share of getting ripped off as a kid. We all did. Usually the person was kind enough to trade me back. Like when I traded my Beedrill for a Charmeleon, a Charmander, and 4 fire energies, like a fucking half-wit, only to then basically beg him to give me my Beedrill back a week later, which he did.
It taught valuable lessons on value and economics and the lizard brain risk of the joy of risk.
What it taught you was that you may have actually won that trade because you needed cards for your deck. What it taught you was that this piece of paper has inherent value, even though it didn't, and you got caught up in the fucking scheme of Pokemon. You're like, this Beedrill!
Capitalism, baby.
No, this Beedrill is fucking trash. You got a Charmeleon and a Charmander and a bunch of energies that you needed to play the game, and no one was playing the fucking game, Chris, and that was what broke my heart as a young man.
I didn't need that. That Beedrill was way cooler and rarer. It was a star. It was a rare. It wasn't a common or an uncommon.
Fake monkey brain.
Wasn't a circle or a square.
Nope, it was a star. And cards you get from like literally the basic bitch starter deck. Come on. Although I will say, this is a funny story.
Okay, justify your way out of that one.
Shout out to 1990s Des4, that my buddy John, who ostensibly ripped me off on this trade, was over.
John who?
And I was like, oh, this was in Texas.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah, John Watson. Shout out John Watson. Kind of a piece of shit.
Out John Watson.
Wish I hadn't
Yo,
been friends with him in hindsight, because he was really shitty to my brothers, and I kind of just went along with it because you needed friends in elementary school.
Yeah, fuck John Watson.
Yeah, fuck you.
John Watson in Texas, like, hey.
First I get shouted out, then I get told to fuck off.
Yeah, no one leaves Texas. He's still in Texas. Anyway, he was over. His parents, I think, were over too. And he's like, yeah, fine, I'll trade you back. I was grounded. All of my cards were confiscated. I kept my mom, practically tears in my eyes. Mom, John is going to let me trade back and get my Beedrill. My poor bewildered mother, who was probably still trying to figure out what the fuck a Pokemon was, is like, no, you're grounded. You cannot have your cards back. I don't care what the circumstances are. Me becoming teary, like, please, I am begging you. Just let me get down. These specific ones, no dice. No dice. I had to wait. Bullshit. Love you, Mom, but
Mom,
that was bullshit.
you can trade him. I don't even need it. You do the trade.
You go do the trade. You can say, no, I'm not doing that. You're grounded. The cards are up there. They're not coming down.
Be my fence.
Parents are so absurd sometimes. And I'm seeing this dichotomy. I don't know if this is a generational thing, if this is an age thing, if this is just a sign of the times because the world is very different now. But seeing my mom raise Daniel, who's now 15, and seeing how much she's doing differently, and how much of that is apathy, how much of that is him specifically, but just the shit that he gets away with.
She's ran out of energy, dude. She expended it all.
I think that's what it is. But just
butting
like
heads with you.
how absurd was it that your mother, and my mom was the same way. No, this is not a conversation. This is not a negotiation. There's no room to budge here. You're being punished, and that's that. And it's like, maybe you could still punish me without being a complete bitch about it, Mom.
Yeah,
sorry.
Maybe have
I'm
a
sorry.
smidge of like circumstantial understanding and like logical reasoning, and just why does that have to interfere with like it makes sense. I'm not asking for you to give me my cards back. I'm asking for you to let me do this specific thing, and then they can go back to whatever godforsaken drawer they were hidden in when I was younger.
Right.
This is also like the same time approximately where I am literally like bringing my cards to school and selling them, and I'm wrapping them in blank white paper with a number on them so that I wouldn't get caught having cards at school, Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, bringing them to school and selling them to make some like side cash. And Mom thought it was like the fucking most smart thing ever for me to be like selling my, she's like, well, it's dumb that you can't have them at school anyway. And she's a teacher at the school. It's like, it's dumb that you can't have them at school. Of course you can bring them to school and sell them. Like, I won't tell anyone, but also wouldn't give me my fucking cards back just because I was grounded and I wanted to trade back for my fucking bee drill. I need to go back to counseling.
Our childhood traumas here on full
It all
display.
started with the bee drill.
All right. We have less than half an hour left, and we all have games we've been playing and want to talk about. I need to talk about Final Fantasy with Chris before you have to leave.
Start us off.
I finally started playing it. I don't know why. I just decided. I woke up and I was like, today's the day. And I texted you and I said, I'm going to fucking do it. I'm going to fucking do it. And I sat down and I fucking did it. I sent you a few voice memos as I got into it. I'm like a few hours into it. Chapter 3, just running around doing side quests right now. I want to sort of pitch my top-down thoughts here. And I don't want you to take this as combative. I just want to give you my thoughts. And I want you to hear them. And then I want you can ask me questions. You can pitch me on this or that. I will say I'm still interested in playing. I am going to play it today. When we're done, I am going to play it. But let's start just top level. I got real in a twist about, can I play this as a newbie? Do I have to know the story? Do I have to? And you said just do a cursory overview, get the Cliff's notes, and that's going to be fine. I'm learning very quickly that is not fine, because this game, and part of this opinion is derived from my 4 or 5 hours with it, and also Brendan's opinion, who is almost done with the game and has complained about a few things. What I am learning is that, as you said, Chris, in response to my voice memo where I was like, I'm just going to put my fingers in my ears and pretend that this is the way that they intend me to experience Final Fantasy VII for the first time. And online people are saying, no, this is a sequel to Final Fantasy VII. And you're like, it's not a sequel, it's supplemental. I'm now seeing what you mean. It is supplemental to the larger Final Fantasy VII universe, even though they are kind of retelling that story. It is something that I can see myself really appreciating if they were to, for example, remake, God, what's something similar that I would have played? I don't know if I have a one-for-one analogy here, but as a fan of Final Fantasy VII, I understand exactly what you mean. This is a beautiful deep dive on these characters and this world in a way that didn't exist 25 years ago, right? The fact that they turned the first hour of this game into an entire game should obviously be telling. But I'm sitting here like, okay, I don't really know what's going on. I mean, I know because I know roughly the story of Final Fantasy VII, but I'm like, all right, they're not really doing a great job of like telling a cohesive or linear story so far. And that was one of Brendan's complaints. He's like, I'm in chapter 11 and you experienced as much story as I have so far. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then I got to this one side quest and it just dawned on me. I'm like, oh, okay, this really is not for me. This is not for people who don't know this game. This is for the Chris's of the world who love this world and love these games. And this is a really elaborate, like, director commentary on the DVD for the true sickos to experience in a deeper, more meaningful way. If this bears out, I'm like, this could have been one really awesome long game. Like, probably didn't need to be 3 games. But again, the intention wasn't to make, I don't think, a really great, cohesive experience for me. It is to just be a loving deep dive on all these things for people like Chris. And in that sense, I will never get it, quote unquote. I will never appreciate it the way you do. And I don't know, we'll see what Rebirth fixes over Remake. But now that I'm like sort of calibrated in that sense, and I've experienced it and I see, I'm like, okay, so I can just keep experiencing this and sort of just take it on face value and hope that the story does enough to keep me engaged. Brennan's feedback is not keeping me very positive in that regard, but the world is very cool. And so far, that is what's keeping me into it. It's not like anything I've experienced before. This doesn't feel like any of the third-person action adventure RPGs that I have played, and several of them I put on the top 100 last year. It's its own thing, and it's cool to see it sort of writ large. What I know of Final Fantasy VII, I played very little of it many years ago. It's unique, and that's cool. In that sense, that's cool, and that's kind of keeping me going. So that's sort of a long-winded way of giving you the top-down sort of where I'm at with it. I would love to get into the combat and some of the other things, some of my thoughts. I haven't written anything down. I'm just sort of, it's all just mush in my fucking brain right now.
I think you're broadly right that it's going to hit the most for people who know the game in one way or another. Because the way that they spool out some stuff that makes you go, wait, she shouldn't, is that like, where you're going, this is
Right.
not quite right. And I fear for Brennan if he's in the 11th chapter of this game and doesn't have a sense of, thinks that you've gotten as much story that he has in 3 chapters as he's gotten in 11. Because I know damn well there's plenty of shit that happens in those chapters, especially if you know Final Fantasy VII. Like, interesting. This character seems to be speaking from a place of knowledge they probably shouldn't have. What does that mean? Et cetera, et cetera. But it is the whole game for Midgar, I think, was pretty intentionally done, just because it's sort of the promise of the original game fully realized, that it was a world very different than any other JRPG that had come before, that was very sword and sorcery. This is more science fiction. It's more grounded. It's an environmentalist game. It's an ecological game. It's an anti-capitalist game. Like, literally the government of this super city is a fucking public utility company, quote unquote, that is destroying the earth to make their riches and keeping people in poverty so they have no choice but to rely on them. God damn, like, that still hits. And for that to be in 97, amazing. Now we get to actually feel that world and see it be lived in and get to know the people who inhabit it a lot better than we ever did before. It's super cool. It's a very pretty game. It runs really well. And it did for me when I played it. I can't speak to like what your performance experience has been. But yes, you are going to get the most out of it if you know the story. Having played it, or even like you having watched it, you'll be able to track some stuff as it goes along and kind of wonder about, like, that definitely was not in here. Like, what does that mean? Tell me about combat. Tell me about your time with that, because you sent me that message yesterday that it was getting a little tiring for you and you're wondering if you need to switch to classic. But like, tell me about what you're feeling at this moment.
At first, I was kind of excited because, like, a game like this wants to just be a fluid action game. And so I was kind of excited at the prospect of being able to hack and slash my way through trash mobs when I want to, and take things a little more methodically and use the ATB system to essentially pause and line up some attacks on different enemies, or as is the case with the first boss you fight, like, all right, I want to hit his legs first, then I want to bring his shield down, and so I can line up a bunch of attacks that way and sort of think about things. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I can kind of pick and choose when I want to engage with these systems. Well, I realized pretty quickly that you kind of always have to be doing both. And to me, that is really fucking annoying. This game clearly wants to just be a fluid action RPG, but it has to be Final Fantasy. So they're like, well, let's rework the ATB system to kind of do what we did all those years ago and to kind of feel like it should be Final Fantasy VII. And it never really does either one, at least so far. It feels like it's doing either one of those spectacularly. So I switched to classic mode last night, where it'll automate your action, and then you can just focus on commands. Honestly, was more frustrating because the action is so much slower than if I just were spamming square and dodging myself. So I'm still so I do like that. Like if I'm really going mindlessly, I can just take my hands off the sticks and wait to throw some commands out there. But it's just so much faster for me to still do both, and so that's kind of annoying because then it turns a fluid action game into a futzing through menus game, and then that's the thing that frustrates me the most. Don't remove me from the fucking action when things are hot and heavy. And that's what this game wants you to constantly be doing. Switching between characters is super annoying. So when I have to be using, early Barrett and now Tifa, when I have to be using one of them, I like that I can like not have to think about the action and it'll just dodge for me. So like that is an improvement, but overall I'm just like, it wants to be one or the other. And in 16, they said, fuck it, we're just going to do the one. Good for them. Good for them.
You will like 16 because it is definitely a lot of like, let me clear this trash, Bob. And then here's an enemy that is, and they even delineate in 16 between enemies that can and cannot be staggered. So if it doesn't have a stagger gauge, it's a basic bitch and you can just like chop it up and move on with your life. And then the stagger gauge, you're like, okay, you're like a mid-tier. I need to actually engage with you a little bit more meaningfully. You should put it on, if you are not already, easy mode. Because, and I do not say this derisively, I'm doing the intermission DLC right now because I never played it and I went, fuck, I can't believe I let that like slide under the radar this long because I didn't have a PS5 version. So I did the free upgrade path with my PS4 disc for my PS5 so that I could then buy the intermission DLC because they will not sell it to you separately unless you have a PS5 version, which doesn't make any sense because like it's my PS4 disc that gave me the free upgrade path to the PS5. So why can't you just like check the disc and go, okay, you can buy this? Like, I don't know. It's inane to me. But in any case, I was like, I am not going to completionist this DLC. If I had done it 3 months ago, I would. But I just need to fucking finish this bitch. So I just set it on easy mode. Trash Mob City. Literally just spam, and then hit an ability when my gauge is full. Battle over. I would suggest if you want to continue engaging with it to learn more about the world, see some of the changes, experience this game to completion, fucking put it on easy mode and go to town, just chopping stuff to bits.
Sadly, if I want the platinum, Chris, I have to beat it on hard mode, which doesn't unlock till the end. So I figure I might as well get used to it now so that I can do a hard mode playthrough at the end because I don't do anything without going full sicko mode.
You're not playing this game twice, EJ. You're not playing this game twice. Let it go. I don't want you to play this game twice. You will not have fun. This will be your least favorite platinum maybe you would ever have gotten. I didn't even play this game on hard mode, man. Like, just set it on easy, beat it for the homies. Not everything's got to be a fucking platinum trophy. Not every game has to be in a steel book. Not every movie has to be 4K Ultra HD. If it's not the most accessible thing or affordable thing at the moment, just put it on easy. Just put it on easy.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Second. Well, you don't unlock it till you beat it anyway, so just beat it on easy, and then if you even feel like playing it again, you can play it on hard, just to really drag your dick through the dirt.
I feel like I need to make sure that I'm learning the systems as intended and engaging with them properly, so that if I do decide to do that, I'm ready, and not just going from hack and slash to, oh shit, I really need to know these systems, and I don't.
That's true. I would say you can still engage with the systems on easy mode, but it's not as stressful. Like, it doesn't feel as dire when you're stopping in the fight to like mete out commands to the other folks. It just feels like I'm doing this because I can, and I know I can, and I know I should. not because like I feel like I'm screwed and I'm being backed into a corner and wait, what does this person's ability do? And if you're switching between folks and getting to know especially their like triangle options, like Cloud's stances, Tifa's finishing moves that you can build by building combo with her, and then Barrett's like overcharge, then you're gonna be okay as long as you understand abilities and their triangle moves. You're gonna be fine.
EJ,
Yes.
are you playing this in English voice or Japanese voice?
Oh, English for sure. I'm not a subtitle guy. Come on.
How are you finding the writing and the performance?
Bad overall. Sephiroth is super cringy. It's a really bad Geralt impression. Cloud is fine, but like a little over the top, edgy. I lost my mind when I first heard Wedge and was like, that's fucking Badger from Breaking Bad. And then I looked it up and was like, wait, that's actually Badger from fucking Breaking Bad. And then Tifa's fine. Overall, not great. The writing is like fine. And then every once in a while, there's like a really cringy line. And I'm like, oh, they took that directly from the PS1 dialogue, I'm sure.
It's schlock. It is even looking at it through the lens of melodrama, which it always has been. It's not great. The script's not great. And I am trying to do the intermission DLC in English, and I just keep hearing Grey Delisle because it's Grey Delisle doing Yuffie, and she sounds like she's 40. Even though she's supposed to be like 14 years old, and it's bad. And I'm like, I have subtitles on anyway because I like to have them on in games with a lot when there's a lot of background noise and BGM and stuff. I will miss dialogue that I don't want to miss. So if I have them on already, I'm just gonna switch to Japanese and probably gonna do all of Rebirth in Japanese, because it is what we used to expect from a Square Enix RPG when it is localized in a way that 16 is not. And hopefully that's the tone going forward, is that they're real. They sound like people and they're written like people, but it's not good. It's not good.
Should I just say fuck this and jump to 16? Is that
honestly, do you want me to ship you my copy?
It's probably not available on PS Plus yet, is it?
I wouldn't think so. I can have that thing boxed up tomorrow,
man.
baby.
No, that's like the only exclusive on the PS5 that's come out in the past 12 months. So
yeah,
that's worth $70. So that's probably going to be worth $70 for a little bit.
That's probably a good point.
Digital.
I would try it. If that, like you said yesterday, Chris, like if an action game is what you want, you're going to like Final Fantasy 16.
Yep.
Because to me, Final Fantasy VII Remake, it wants to be that so bad. They clearly want that, but they couldn't. And so they are straddling the line between these two very different ideas, and I don't know if either of them are executed particularly well. It's like fine. Like I'm not like fuck this sucks or this is bad. It's just like I'm annoyed by this, and I want to do one or the other. And the game would be better if I could do one or the other.
Yeah, I wonder how they would even implement something like that if they tried to make Final Fantasy VII a strictly action game. Just because there are so many different summons and abilities, I don't know how you would map that to a controller without it feeling super clunky and unfucking tenable.
I think Rebirth, just based on the first demo, I never did do the Junon demo. Just based on the first demo, gives you a lot more agency over different things, like with the block and parry, with the ability to get airborne and chase airborne enemies. The fact that there are some abilities that, like the fact that you have to have ATB to use items or assess, is so fucking stupid. And to my recollection from the demo, both of those things have been removed. You can just do them. You don't have to fucking attack and wait till you have a gauge to use a fucking potion in the middle of the battle. That is over. And rightfully so.
I'm going to keep going. I'm going to play it today. I'm going to get into chapter 4 or 5 and see kind of how I feel about it.
How's the music?
The music's great. It feels like it's of a bygone era. Like video games don't really have music this bombastic, or if it does, it's like cartoonish, or it is used sparingly. And Final Fantasy VII is just a constant barrage of these ridiculous orchestral explosions. And I'm like, this is kind of cool. This is pretty epic.
Not to mention, it's like probably the least orchestral written soundtrack from Uematsu. Up to that point, like that is a super divergence from every Final Fantasy before it. I'm just thinking of like the Turks theme, thinking of Shinra. It's super like industrial and like jazzy. There's a lot of variation in the soundtrack that sounds like hip hop inspired. It's really, really fucking cool.
Yeah, God tier soundtrack. even on PS1, like stands as like a really shining example. And the orchestrated version's like, holy shit. I still have in my car the mini CD that came with my Remake Deluxe Edition. And I'm excited tomorrow when we're going to be on the drive, I'm going to slap the CD from Rebirth in the CD player and fucking take a nice trip through these new tunes. Get me primed to.
I could never do that. Before playing the game, I could never. Miss me with that. I will not listen to a soundtrack until I play the game. Unless I'm never going to play the game, then I'm listening to the soundtrack, and that's fine.
I know all the songs. Like, they're not new. They're just reorchestrated.
You've already played the game, so you wouldn't care if you knew about how they did something. It's not what they're doing, it's how they're doing it, Chris. Come on, you should know this.
Nah, man, I'm perfectly capable of enjoying it absent its setting, and then seeing it in the setting.
That's fine. That just means you're less of a person than me.
Well, we knew that already.
Thank you. Fine. God, feels good to be validated.
Chris, we're butting against your time here.
Yeah, I beat Resident Evil 4, and I had only talked a little bit about it last time because I think we were similarly in an end of time crunch, and I was like, let me just say I'm playing it and it's great. This will be not entirely dissimilar. That I beat it and it's great. I ended the game with the 3 weapons that I had sort of zeroed in on. A handgun, a shotgun, and a rifle. That was the way I was going to play. I didn't want to fuck with a machine gun. It feels wasteful to just spray ammo. I ended up with the three in each of those categories that I used completely upgraded. My knife was completely upgraded. And then when you get the second knife from fucking Krauser, I was like, oh, this is better for the reasons that I use it. So I dumped my combat knife and fully upgraded that knife. So I thought I had like a pretty damn solid playthrough. I only missed like 2 treasures, which I didn't realize at the time were skippable, which, RIP. But in getting everything else, like I always had cash for what I wanted, which was nice. I rolled into like the final sequence with the shotgun that I had. Its exclusive function when you upgrade it fully is that it doubles the ammo storage. And so my shotgun with this big cylinder of shells, literally holding 48 shotgun shells at a time, I could go into the final encounter against Sadler and just literally like bow, like just absolutely spamming shotgun into all of his gross little eyeballs. This game, I said last time, didn't really have me feeling the same feeling I felt with Resident Evil 2, which was a much scarier, isolated, haunting experience where you are always vulnerable at all times and you cannot kill the threats that are in front of you. That never changed. Like, you can kill and should kill basically everything that's in front of you in Resident Evil 4 because why not? Like, you will have ammunition, you will have materials to make ammunition. But as this game progressed, it really did a fantastic job of dialing up the survival horror parts of what makes Resident Evil great. Getting into the castle and having some admittedly easier than Resident Evil 2 puzzles, but some puzzles to solve with getting things to put on statues or taking this thing here and putting it in this suit of armor's hand. Sliding tile type shit was really cool. Getting into claustrophobic areas where it's like, I could take the time to kill all of these like shambling suits of armor and like animated by tentacles, but it takes a ton of ammo, so it really doesn't make sense. I should just kite it and figure like, oh my God, like this is what it felt like in Resident Evil 2. Like, I can't take the time to kill all these things. I have to run, I have to hide. And then finally landing on the island where we get some of the coolest like action set pieces, like the fucking chopper coming in. Holy shit, that sequence is so fucking tight, and like the music's all ramped up and you're getting waves of people, and he's like, oh, I'm out of ammo, and you're in this big arena with guys with chain guns and you have to take them out, use the chain guns, and then, oh, here's a fucking like bull man with a machine gun strapped to his arm, and like he's fucking like spraying bullets at me. I'm having to like kite, grenade, get out from cover, like rifle a couple bitches, and like here comes the chopper back, like yes, we're gonna get out of here. Chopper goes down, fuck, like it just amazing action set pieces. And also dropping me in some of these lab sequences and sewer sequences where it's really dark and you can only power certain things at a certain time. And here comes a fucking enemy that is functionally unkillable that is just the most awful thing I encountered in this game, or maybe even the last game in the form of the regenerators. Holy shit, this big blobby piece of shit Mr. Fantastics you from like 20 yards away, grabs you, tries to eat you. I just fanned shotgun to try to kill him. His limbs fly off. He drops. I'm thinking, great. All I know from the file I picked up is you have to kill all the parasites inside of him once. I don't know what that means. So I'm just like, eat lead. Maybe I'll get them all. And then it starts crawling on the ground like a fucking slug and flopping around and jumping on top of you. And I'm like, no. And the sound, some of the sounds that it makes, like just from like distantly back in the lab, I'm like kiting one of them. I go into a freezer and I'm like, thank God I got away from that one. Maybe the cold affects them, only for a second one to like slop out of a body bag right behind me. Now there's two of them behind me and I have no reasonable means of killing them. I was like, damn, they really were like, you think we can't still do that? You really think we can't still make you feel like that? Joke's on you. This game has fucking everything. I understand now the way that this shaped an industry for a decade. I understand now why people told me for years I should play this game. I understand why it needed to be remade so that you could have the most beautiful, smooth, and accessible experience with it possible. This absolutely lives up to every piece of hype it has received. I loved this game. And EJ, honestly, scary bits at the end aside, you would have so much more fun with this game than a quote unquote traditional like survival horror Resident Evil experience. Because of some things like the different like guns that you can use and the ways that changes your play style, getting into different like combat arenas where you have different destructibles and vantage points and switching between weapon types. Like you might actually fuck heavy with this game if you played it. And it is, again, just one of the best games that I have played.
Strikes me as a game that would be fun to play with the boys.
With Brennan in your ear so you can not get scared.
Right, yeah. You guys making light on the couch next to me of the scary parts and then us laughing at the campy parts and then just shooting things.
Oh, and the camp. Holy shit, the camp. Leon S. Kennedy, marry me. Like the fucking one-liners that fly out of this guy's mouth on a frequent basis, and they're all so fucking good, well-placed in the progression of what's happening, perfectly delivered by the voice actor. And then you're going to get one more. You're going to get one more during the final boss. And it's a fucking great one. When you finally get to the moment of taking out the final boss, I was just like, yes, there it is. Oh man. Yeah, this game fucking rules. It rules.
Give me a Kubrick score. Where are we at?
95.
Wow.
This game is unimpeachably excellent. There is nothing wrong with it. The only reason that I wouldn't give it a full 100 is because we've never are we doing the 110 out of 100 is perfect, which is never achievable. So 100 is it's so good that there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not perfect because perfect doesn't exist. Like we haven't set, as Nick likes to say, and rightfully so, what these numbers mean. But for me, I go 95 with no hesitation because I literally cannot find a single thing wrong with this game. It is absolutely fucking flawless.
This is the best game you've played since we started the podcast. Holy shit.
Yeah, I don't remember what I gave Metroid Prime, but I mean, I would put it in the same rarefied air or Tears that there's, well, I'd put this above Tears of the Kingdom for sure. I think that even on visuals and performance alone,
that's a hard thing to compare when the game is on Switch and it's a Switch game.
Exactly. But am I really going to give it the same, as high a score as RE4, which ran flawlessly on PlayStation 5, literally at all times with no frame drops in my entire playthrough, when TOTK would look like a typewriter when you had more than 8 enemies and explosions on screen? I don't know. They're both fucking great, but RE4 is a goddamn incredible video game.
Well, on that note, Chris, you have to leave.
All right, fam.
All right, man.
Beautiful. Lovely.
Bye, Chris.
He was glowing. EJ, are you gonna play Resident Evil 4?
I don't know, man. I have so many games that I quote unquote want to play that'll be one of those literally y'all come down for 2 nights, I'll pop it in and see what it does for me. I feel a lot better with you next to me. Okay. Maybe Final Fantasy 16. Although that What I like about Final Fantasy VII so far is that it doesn't feel like a Western action RPG. It doesn't feel like something like The Witcher. It feels like a JRPG, but it doesn't look like any JRPG I have ever played, because all of the JRPGs I play are like uber weeb, like fantasy, medieval. This is so unique for me. I just wish the systems were better, and even if the systems are better in Final Fantasy 16, I'm like, well, that looks like a game that I've probably played before, right? I like that this feels so unique, and that's kind of what's keeping me on the string. So who knows? Who knows?
No, that totally makes a lot of sense. I think generally people like Final Fantasy VII Remake more than Final Fantasy 16. People were pretty hot on it, but I think that's like a reaction as opposed to a fresh take. You know, it's coming from a place of people having experienced 15 and 13 and 12 and 11 and getting sick of one way of doing things and looking for something different.
Right. And for fans of the game, you know, it's my Metroid argument. You know, Metroid Prime Remastered does not get a 94 if 50 of the people reviewing it were playing it for the first time. And I feel that way about this game. Like this is definitely for the old heads. This is not meant to be played anew. This is not for people who want the Final Fantasy VII story for the first time. Everyone online says it's a sequel. Chris says it's supplemental. Both those things seem true. And in that sense, I don't think you can just play it and do anything but feel kind of like, okay, the way Brennan and I are, you know? Bummer for me, but great for Final Fantasy VII fans.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting way to go about structuring a remake. Like I talked about that. I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, but like what is the purpose? Who is this for? I think a lot of times a remake is to bring new people into a series. And this seems like this is as big of a series as it could possibly be. So let's do something for those people, which I think is awesome. It's just, you don't get that a lot. It's a very unique kind of case.
Right. And it's a little off-putting for people who aren't fans of the series or the specific franchise. And the Final Fantasy VII lore is already so convoluted. And you touched on it last week about like, oh, they retconned this thing and this thing never actually happened, but they said on a wiki somewhere that it did. And you're just like,
which Chris did end up, correcting me, but also the cutscene he was talking about was optional. It was a thing you had to find. It was not something that was given to you. So it's like, but we were both right in that case.
Right.
So it's like a plot hole can exist because they did a bad job explaining it too.
Absolutely. So again, in that sense, it's as much as we like to say, oh, such and such isn't for you or for me, like this really is not for people like me and Brennan. This is not a game you can just plop in and be like, I'm going to play this fantastical RPG. Because you're going to feel lost and you're going to feel confused and you're going to feel irritated.
That sounds pretty true to the original experience.
Yeah. I was telling Brennan about your experience with Final Fantasy VII.
Not a bad game. I did not have a bad time playing that game, but it is stupid in a lot of ways.
Super cool for the 90s. We've come a long way since the 90s.
The characters might have been 3-dimensional, but the writing was very 2D.
You just described JRPGs in general, my friend. JR2Ds.
No, only the mainstream ones or the ones you've played.
What can I say? I'm a basic bitch. What have you been playing?
I have been playing a very mid RPG.
You just beat Final Fantasy VII.
I know, and I needed more. So I am playing The Legend of Nayuta, Breaking Trails. I need to look this up.
Okay.
I literally had it, but then I lost it because it's a bad name.
Is it because I hit you with the Record of Let War Delete in Wonderland?
Yes.
I fucked you up.
The Legend of Nayuta, Boundless Trails. So I was there, but I stumbled on it. Anyway, yes. This is a PSP action RPG, a spin-off from the Trails series, which is also a spin-off of the Legend of Heroes series, which is also technically a spin-off of some other, what is it, Dragon Heroes, Dragon Force, something. Anyway, this is from Falcom. This is from the folks that make the Ease games, which I do like a lot. I do like that more than this as well. But this is an action RPG spin-off of a more traditional turn-based RPG. There is nothing really that I can tell. It doesn't feel like there's anything connected. It just seems like there's I don't know how it's connected. It's a spinoff, but it's not based on a character from an existing franchise, I don't think. So, whatever. It seems like the world's completely different. I have no idea. But PSP, action RPG, pretty basic. You're running around these levels and you're attacking enemies. You have a 4-hit combo that you upgrade into a 5-hit combo. You've got some air juggles. You've got some dodging. You unlock a block. It is very like minimal and basic, catchy tunes. Nothing really very inoffensive. The story is nice-ish. It is not really trying to do much, but it is achieving joy from me just through its sheer minimalism, I guess I could say. It feels like a PSP game. And if you take yourself back and you think about playing PSP games, if you play them on a TV, it'd be boring as hell. It'd be kind of bad, right? Because they were, a lot of times, the PSP was kind of on that cusp between PS1 and PS2 kind of graphically, and it was widescreen, which was really cool. None of the Nintendo handhelds have been widescreen, so it kind of gave it a little bit more panache. It kind of felt more adult in that way. But the game design was very bare bones and minimal because these things, the battery only lasts like 3 hours, so you can only really achieve that much playtime in a go without plugging into something. So a lot of the games were designed around that. And I really like the sort of pick up and play ethos in a lot of handheld games. And I think it's really translated well, especially into the Switch. And it's part of the reason why I like that system so much is the games are kind of built like handheld games, but not as bad as a lot of handheld games in the past. It's sort of like 30 years culmination of a journey. But this is a game that came out in 2005, and it feels like it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like going back and playing games I never experienced from the elden times I played Final Fantasy VII just like 2 weeks ago. And that was fine. I complain about a lot of things, but that's because a lot of people talk about it like it's Jesus, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfect. It's amazing. It's one of the best games ever. Only comparing it to Final Fantasy VI, people argue about those two games being the best the franchise has to offer. But this is not Final Fantasy. This is The Legend of Nayuta Boundless Trails, a game that probably sold like 20,000, 50,000 copies when it originally came out on PSP, but they decided to remaster it and put it out on Switch and PlayStation 4 and stuff like that. So I bought it and I'm playing it, and it's like, man, this is like from a different time. It's really interesting and nice to experience a small game that is, I mean, you get a lot of that from like indie games, but this was on store shelves. This was half of the games that came on a PSP were about this tier. So it's fun for me to go back and play something that is a 70, 75 out of 100 game and just like, yeah, this is exactly what that is. I don't have to play 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s. I don't have to. I love playing mid games. Good middling games. Like, I love that. I get a lot of joy from that.
Top 100 PSP edition. When?
Name 100 PSP games? No. I don't want to do that. My God, you're going to make me play like a shitty God of War and like Tokobot. I liked Tokobot. That was also a hidden gem. Like Loco Roco with Patapon and all this other crap. No.
The PSP version of Star Wars Battlefront.
My brother in Christ.
What an experience.
No thanks. But yeah, I mean, this just, okay. You know, this makes me think of, we had a channel when we first got satellite TV, because it was always like, oh, you get the deal, right? And they give you like 100 extra channels or 200 extra channels for the first 3 months. And it's like, oh, maybe you'll love it so much and you'll keep paying us for it. And it's like, we never did because it was just a promotional deal. And we had a channel that was like an anime channel. And this was, 2004. So anime was like Dragon Ball and Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And that was pretty much it, Toonami. So Inuyasha was like the edgiest fucking anime you could watch. And we had this anime channel, and it was dubbed, like it was still English voice acting, but it was very different shows. And it kind of reminds me of that, like the second tier anime that you had to pay extra for a worse product. So you had to be like a real sicko to like seek this out. This seems like something you would pay extra for a worse product, but for the PSP in 2005.
Dude, honestly, that's kind of been Sony's handheld ethos for 2 decades.
Since they started.
We're going to just make a bunch of really middling anime games, and people are going to spend so much fucking money on these things when they're out of print. And that's just going to,
Yeah.
quote unquote, carry the console in the hearts and minds of the weirdos, even if it
And I
sells
think
terribly.
The genre of RPGs, even though it's so tied into what video games are now, like every game, we joke about it, every game is an RPG. Call of Duty has RPG shit going on in it. It's like the term doesn't really mean anything anymore. But back in those days, RPGs were falling off in a big way. Final Fantasy VII and Pokemon were these huge sensations, and there was like a boom followed by an incredible bust. PS2 had a million RPGs, all of them better than the last, but they sold like shit, so no one wanted to make them anymore. And then into the PSP and the PS3, not to mention Nintendo just had never had a JRPG presence because they had a system that only had 32 megabits of memory with the N64, so no one wanted to make games on that thing, especially in a long-winded, drawn-out, anime-inspired genre like JRPGs. No thanks. Similar problem with the GameCube with the mini DVDs. Like, nobody wanted to put JRPGs on that console either, so it was all Sony. And by the time the PSP rolled around, it was such a niche and diehard hardcore community that it was like a weird incestuous whirlpool of weird shit happening. And now it's spiraled out and is big again with like Persona and Nier and Final Fantasies like back in a big way. That these like weird niche handheld titles from 20 years ago can come out again and maybe have another life, but it's like looking into an alternate history in a lot of ways. I find it very interesting.
For the longest time, video games and the trends in the industry directly correlated to the technology. You could make a compelling RPG when you're working with 2D graphics and limited memory, and as we get into the PS3 era, everyone wants these like big 3D action games with these set pieces, and that's what took off because we could finally do it. And motion capture and like real actors and like quality voice acting and all these things. And so we see this trend as games change and evolve with the technology, but we've plateaued the last decade. There are no more technological innovations. So we're settling into, we know it's possible and we can't just keep making the same game. Like there has to be this variety. We have to start looking, and this is why indie games took off in such a big way in the last couple of years, because we hit the ceiling on what technology could afford us. And now we have to get back to the basics of just like making compelling, interesting games. And it's great for us because there's such a variety now of games being supported and developed and polished, where like you can play some of these indie games, for example, that would have been a AA like bargain bin crap can now get like AAA attention. Hollow Knight can be the #1 game on Console Crusade's top 100 all time. Anyway, it's just interesting to see how those cycles sort of continue, and now we're sort of in this unprecedented era. And I think that's one way to look at it is, oh well, the technology has plateaued, that's a bad thing, versus like the technology has plateaued, so now it's all about the games.
Indie games in general have been awesome, particularly because a lot of them, especially earlier on, back in like the 360 days, were developers that were inspired pretty much one-to-one by like a game. So they said, hey, I liked this game, and they didn't really make anything else like that for a long time, so I'm going to do that again, but do a little twist on it. And that was great. That was huge. That really pushed the industry forward creatively. So I want indie games float the best games of the past, their ideas, back up to the surface, but they're not going to make an indie game that's based on like the action RPG mechanics of a niche action JRPG for the PSP that came out 20 years ago, right? So there's still a market to me for these kinds of games, but they're not going to make new ones of this. Like there's not going to be a new game like this. Not really, like very sparingly. Like there's still ease games and they're kind of like a action RPG, very traditional kind of vibes. I think I've talked about it. Like Ease 8 is like a PS2 game that looks great and runs great and is like the best version that game could possibly be. But I don't know. It's just people don't make games like this anymore. I don't think. Like there might be some like weird, like very niche Steam game that's come out like this, but discoverability is so bad that how would you possibly find it? So I don't know. I'm having a good time with this, but like I told Brandon, he was asking me like, "Oh, I've had my eye on that. Should I buy it? Should I play it?" I'm like, if you have nothing else to play, like I would recommend it, but it is like totally just fine. Like it is a good game. I'm not having a bad time at all. And I'm going to finish it. I'm like 3 of the locations through. I just got to the 4th and there's 4 of them, so I'm like probably pretty close to the end. And I'm enjoying it, but it's like I cannot recommend this. I don't know. It butts up against my sensibilities towards just like openly recommending any game. Like I'm not going to just say, "Hey, I like this, you should play it." So, I don't know. Brandon would love it. I think he would probably like it more than I do, but I don't know if he has the time or bandwidth to play just like everything. I know he plays too much. He plays a lot of things, but like I can't just say, "Yeah, you should play this."
Well, I'm going to play more Final Fantasy today, and we'll see. We'll see today. Today, I think we'll determine whether I continue or whether I stop forever. Thankfully, I didn't pay anything for it, so.
Yeah, chat with me about it. I would be happy to hear more of your takes on it as well. I know you're talking with Chris, and obviously he's more into Final Fantasy VII and has played the remake, but I would also like to play the remake at some point because I do want to experience what it adds to the action RPG pantheon and like how that influences how other games are going to be made going forward. Because I play action RPGs, just I don't have a PS5. That's all.
See, you would hate the way Chris and I talk because it's just sending a series of longer and longer voice memos to each other.
Just call each other. What's wrong with you?
Well, it's because
don't call me though.
Well, I know you fucking hate getting phone calls. I learned that a long time ago. You don't fucking call Nick unless you need him now for something important.
I just want to answer. That's all.
I like talking on the phone more than I like texting. I really don't like texting. I don't mind it if I'm on Discord and I'm like on my computer and I can just type at people. But like having to have a conversation, fucking texting, I loathe it. So we just voice memo, and we're both busy, and it's like I can listen to this when I have a chance, and he can listen when he has a chance. So we respond. It's usually us either on our walks or like driving around, usually huffing and puffing, whatever we're doing. Yeah, like we joke, it's a podcast, but for one person. Almost like our podcast, Nick.
Nice. Yeah, and to be fair, we are basically just talking on the phone right now. And another thing, I did call you when I was driving over to meet up with you to go to some game stores and stuff. And that was hilarious. You loved that.
Dude, you were raging. You were raging about...
I was irate.
Were you on Stark?
No, Division.
Division. Yeah. Division is fucked up. And I remember it was at my grandma's, and I was like, I just got a hilarious phone call from my friend Nick bitching about all the changes on Division because she does the same thing. She's like, it's horrible down there now. I know. It's fucking terrible. That was pretty good.
Moved to Portland.
That's pretty funny. Very good. Very good. I guess that's it, huh? For the Console Crusade podcast?
Yeah, solo.to/Console Crusade.
Yeah. Nobody joined the Discord last week. I know you guys were listening. I know. I see the numbers. People are listening every week and not joining the Discord to talk shit with us. It's just Discord, okay? You don't have to fucking pay AOL to send you a disc that you have to load up and then make. You just fucking download on your phone. You double tap. You're in. Join. Hit the link. My goodness, people.
Yeah, we don't even have like spam bots or anything. It's not like nobody's pussy is in their bio.
I promise.
It's just people talking. It sucks.
You can mute any of the threads you're not interested in. As an aside, do you love how they're trying to restart the Music League over there, but just by implementing bigger versions of all the things that made the first one so toxic? Don't you love that?
Yeah, everyone have 6 votes and down votes and
ranked choice and a prize. And you also notice how like 2 people are wanting to participate. Wow, what a surprise. I'm shocked. Although I jest, but I was no small part of what made that toxic. Me and Trevor and Sam low-key conspiring to fuck with everybody. I regret it. I'm going to kick everyone out of that fucking Discord. Come over here if you want to talk shit about the podcast. Otherwise, leave me the fuck alone.
You were like defending some of those people and like their takes and stuff. And like, I get along with them. They're like work buddies and that kind of thing. But now you're just like, mask off. I hate these people.
No. I really like Ben. He's hilarious.
You're defending Jeff too.
You just have to be an adult who plays nice with people. I like talking to the schmucks I like. Thus the podcast. Thus the private channels with Bren and my brother and other people.
He's thinking.
Who do I like all the time? That's a short list. Very short
Digging
list.
deep. SpongeBob with the T.
It's been the Console Crusade podcast, all right?